On this last season of Black Ops 6 ranked play, I was playing on other people's accounts to get them on hard stuck, and I noticed that the majority of players are likely hindering themselves by using the wrong settings. So today I'm going to be going over, in my opinion, the 10 settings you should never use in Black Ops 6 ranked play. In addition to that, I'll be giving you all of my settings for both PC and console. If this video helps you out, like and subscribe, and let's start with my number one problem setting, which is having the wrong dead zones. When I hop on a lot of people's accounts, this is likely what their dead zones will look like, which is crazy to me because changing your controller to have the optimal dead zones is extremely important for micromanaging your aim and making sure that your movement and strafing is on point. So let's start with this. I'm just going to get the big ones out of the way. The left stick max, we're going to go down to about 70. The right stick max, we're going to 95. The left stick min, we're going down as low as we can go without getting movement stick drift. And the right stick min, we're going as low as we can without getting aiming stick drift. Now the minimums will change depending on your controller, but these maxes should stay the same. For me, my controller is a couple months old, so I go 7 on the left stick min and just 1 on the right stick min. But double check that you have your optimal dead zones, because I promise you this is the #1 game changer when it comes to wrong settings in Black Ops 6. The second setting that I see a lot of people getting wrong is honestly this entire tab right here. What I want to talk about in particular right now is the ADS field of view, as well as motion blur and then camera movement. So for ADS field of view, want to make sure that you have this on affected. This makes it so that your ADS is more normal, which is in turn going to help your aim and your view while aiming. On top of that, in terms of view while moving, you want your world motion blur and your weapon motion blur both to be off, as well as your first person and third person camera movement on 50%. As you're moving and traversing the map, as you can see on the screen right here, adding motion blur only makes it more difficult to see opponents that you might run into. So this actually is a key setting that you want to make sure you have off. And the third setting I see people having wrong is their sensitivity is either way too high or way too low. Now don't get me wrong, this is personal preference. There are people way better than me that play at max sensitivity. There are people way better than me that play at a lower sensitivity than I do. But if you're unsure on your sense, I would start in the range of like 1.3, and I would try to snap onto targets while shooting bots and hip firing. Make sure that you can keep your aim steady as you're hip firing the targets. If you feel steady and like you're not overshooting, and if you feel like your center dot stays on target the entire time, then you can go into your settings and turn your sensitivity up until it feels like a more normal value for you. For me, it feels the best at 1.65. I don't feel like I'm overshooting the target or anything like that, and I also feel like I'm snappy enough to go from one target to the other. Take your time getting used to each sensitivity, and if you're truly unsure of where to start, like I said, I would go in the range of 1.3 to 1.4 and gradually increase this until you feel comfortable with it, maybe even waiting a couple days before bumping the sensitivity up. Wrong setting number 4 for all my console friends is not having your USB cable as the communication method for your controller. What you need to do is go into your settings, then accessories, controller, and then right here where it says communication method, you want to click on this and choose use USB cable. The reason we're doing this is because although sometimes Bluetooth is faster, the speed is dynamic and can be changed depending on if there's Bluetooth devices in the area. Keeping this on use USB cable makes your connection more stable, and in the long term will help you with your consistency in aim and your reaction to moving targets. Setting mistake number 5 is actually not having your fidelity cast turned on with the strength at 100. There are some exceptions to this, like when I play on console, I actually have mine down to 30. The reason I'm doing this is because I play at 4K, and the original PS5 isn't really powerful enough to do that at 100. But in terms of seeing your game better and having better sharpness, you want to make sure that, again, the fidelity cast is on with a strength of 100. Mistake number 6 is not having your crosshairs on static. When you leave these just on or just center dot, there's a ton of bobbing and swaying that happens as you traverse the map. And with something as important as centering, at the higher levels, you really do want to make sure that your centering is on point. So having this on static definitely helps out with that. Mistake number 7 is that people play with way too high of an FOV. I see a lot of people on multiplayer with controller running like 110, 120. Don't get me wrong, it's possible to get used to it, but the pro players, like the best of the best players in the game, are actually running lower FOV, like 95, 97. Truthfully, if you're on controller, you don't want to go much higher than 107, because then the aim curve starts to feel a little bit off, and it truly does feel like you get less aim assist. So for me, I play at 105, and I know that's at the higher range, but especially if you're somebody who has like shaky shots or you're not confident about your aim, you'll feel better and you'll feel like you hit more shots if you play at a lower FOV for a little bit. But like I said, for me, I like playing on 105. Mistake number 8 is not playing on the dynamic aim curve response type. Now, a lot of people have actually tried linear, and if you're somebody that performs well with linear, I won't tell you not to use it. But what I wouldn't do is leave this on completely standard, because a lot of people don't even go into these settings and change this. So again, if you're somebody who's gone from dynamic to linear and you're playing really well, I'm not going to tell you to change it. If you're somebody that hasn't touched this setting yet, you want to make sure that this is on dynamic, and I don't mess with the curve slope scale. I leave this at 1. The reason we're doing this is to have a more responsive aim, especially at the lower and higher values for like your micro adjustments and stuff like that. Wrong setting number 9 is actually having tap to slide on. Now, the big reason that tap to slide is a mistake is that there's a huge delay when it comes to tap to slide versus hybrid, and as often as you need to slide in this game, is extremely important that you have no delay. Now, you could go into the tap to slide settings and change the slide and dive activation delay. This might make it to where your slides are more responsive, but I promise you, if you get used to slide only, or if you get used to hybrid, that will allow you to do both your sliding and your diving without having to deal with the weird delay it gives you when you're tapping circle and it's not sure if you're holding it or not. And the final mistake number 10, is leaving your texture resolution on normal or high. That severely impacts your VRAM usage. If you're playing on PC, you want to make sure that this is low or very low. Give yourself more frames, better frames, and more stability while you're playing the game. And up next, we have my full settings from start to finish on both PC and console at the end. But before we get into that, I want to shout out the sponsor of today's video. Today's video is brought to you by 1v1 Me. If you watched my last video, I made a $20 stake and in exchange for 36. Today, I'm placing a $10 stake. Team Proto wins over Team Phantoms. And just in case you don't know, 1v1 Me allows you to stake top gamers for a percentage of the prize pool they're playing for. So stay tuned to see how this one goes for me. If you want to stake along with me or even against, check out the link in the description and use code LunchTime for up to a $10 match towards your first stake. You have to be 18 or older, stake responsibly and for fun, and let's get back to the video. Starting with the graphics, again, we're going to start with the PC settings. We'll get to the PS5 settings by the end of this video. We're going to start here with full screen exclusive in the display mode. You want to make sure that you're exclusive or at least full screen, because this reduces your input delay. The rest of the settings here, you want to make sure that you have your proper display adapter and display monitor depending on your graphics card and what monitor you're using. Also make sure that the screen refresh rate matches the monitor that you're using as well. For display resolution and aspect ratio, you just want to make sure again that these match what you're using. For the NVIDIA Reflex low latency, we've talked about this before, but on plus boost is what you use when your graphics card is better than your CPU. If your CPU is better than your graphics card, I would leave this on just on. For the eco mode preset, we'll have that on custom, then off for the VSync in the gameplay and the menus. The custom frame limit, we're going to go custom. It's 360 in the menu and 30 when out of focus. For the reduced menu render resolution, we have this on optimal. The rest of the settings are here with the HDR as off. Now going into the quality where things get super important, have the graphic preset on custom with the render resolution matching what my monitor is using. Dynamic resolution, I turn this off, and the upscaling sharpening, I have this at fidelity cast with a strength of 100. For the rest of my settings, the frame generation I have off, VRAM scale target is 80, variable rate shading is off. And now we get into these super important settings of the details and texture. So the texture resolution is going to be very low. Texture filter is normal. Depth of field off. Detail quality low. Particle resolution is very low. Bullet impacts and persistent effects are going to be off. Keep your shader quality on low, and then your on-demand texture streaming as minimal with the remainder of the settings here. And last on this tab is actually local texture streaming quality. We're going to have that on normal. Scrolling down to the shadows and lighting, we're going to keep everything on very low or off. So shadow quality is very low. Screen space occlusion and screen space reflections are all off. And then the static reflection quality is going to be low. For the environment, everything again is off or low, like tessellation off, volumetric quality low. The remainder of the settings are all going to be off as well. And now with the more objective settings out of the way, we're going to go to the view tab where we get pretty subjective. That being said, my field of view that I rock is 105. For the rest of the settings, we'll have the ADS field of view unaffected, weapon field of view is wide, and then scroll down here and make sure that your motion blurs are off and that your first person camera movement is at 50%. And then that's going to be it for the graphic settings. And up next is the controller settings. So I personally use the Scuff Reflex FPS that you can see on screen right here, but these settings are going to apply for pretty much any controller that you want to end up using. So as we scroll down into these settings, I use 1.65 for both the horizontal and the vertical sensitivity. This of course is personal preference, but what you'll want to do if you're not sure what sensitivity to use is to start low, probably around like 1.3 or 1.4, and slowly ramp it up until you notice yourself like overcorrecting your shots or unable to maintain target while ADSing. That would be a reasonable time for you to slowly lower it back down until you find a healthy middle ground. I flip the L1 R1 and L2 R2 because I play on the default button layout. The reason I do this is because when I play claw, it's way easier to aim and shoot with L1 and R1, but this is another setting that's pretty personal preference. I know some people that play like stick and move, or tactical is another one. Generally, these are all personal preference though, and something that you want to find for yourself. I do have my controller vibration on, but I turn the intensity all the way down to 1 or 0. This is a setting you want to get used to, especially if you're on console, because it lowers the input delay of the controller that you're using. Not by much, but enough so that it's worth turning the setting on with a low vibration intensity. And the intensity is so low that you don't even feel it when you're playing. For the dead zone inputs, here's where we're also going to get kind of subjective. Main points you want to take away from this, right, are the left stick max should be low, like 70, 75, maybe even 65. This helps you reach that maximum strafe speed as fast as possible to almost have like keyboard and mouse like strafe. The faster you get your rotational movement to the highest speed, the better you'll get that rotational aim assist. So you want to have this at the lower range. Now the left stick min and the right stick min, you want to make this as low as possible without getting stick drift. I've had this controller for months now, so I have a little bit of left stick drift, but that goes away if I bump it up to like the 5 to 7 range. If you don't notice your left stick drifting or moving at all, you can lower it all the way down to 0. And same thing for the right stick. This controller has been great to me, and I only need the right stick min at 1 despite having this controller for months. But depending on what your personal controller looks like, you could lower this down to 0, or you might need to bump it up a little bit more if you're getting some slight stick drift. That being said, a little bit of stick drift on the right side is okay. It actually helps you grab onto targets faster. So if you're slightly drifting, don't worry about it that much, but if you need to bump it up higher, definitely do so. And the last one is the right stick max. I have this on 95 just because I watched a YouTube video that said it makes the aim curve a little more stable. Not 100% sure if that's placebo or not, and honestly it feels the exact same as like 99 to 100, but I just put this on 95 to be safe. Up next, in the aiming tab, or for the aiming advanced settings, you want to make sure that you have dynamic for the aim response curve type. I don't mess with the slope scale at all. I keep this on 1, and I also don't mess around with the custom sensitivities per zoom. I know that some people do, but I like to keep this on off. In the ADS sensitivity transition time, you want to make sure this is on instant. I think natively when you load into the game, it's on gradual. Change this to instant because it makes the most sense while you're aiming. Leave my target aim assist on. I do go into the motion sensor advanced settings and turn the FOV sensitivity scaling off. I'm pretty sure this is placebo as well, but I turn it off just to be safe. And that's going to be it for the aiming tab. Up next is movement. I have my sprint assist on with a sprint assist delay of 0, and then the sideways and backwards on. For the mantle assist, I turn that off. Crouch assist is off, and the corner slicing is off. This is personal preference, but it's something that I don't really like. I feel like it messes with my aim when I'm going up to a corner and my body moves right or left. Up next for the slide and dive behavior, I have this on hybrid. I absolutely love this setting, and you either need to be on hybrid or slide only. That way you don't get a delay when you're sliding. If you do like a tap to slide, I promise you there's a noticeable delay when sliding between the tap to slide and like the slide only or the hybrid setting. You have to trust me when I say that that delay is noticeable enough to actually prioritize learning how to use hybrid or slide only. For the rest of the settings, I have my automatic airborne mantle off, my sprint restore is on, slide maintain sprint is on, and then for the movement advanced settings, I go in here and turn on single tap run. This makes it so I only need to click my left stick once in order to reach tactical sprint while I'm doing the normal sprint. And this is also where you go to turn ground and mantle off. Make sure you have that off because you'll automatically mantle a bunch of things on accident. And that's going to do it for the movement settings. Over here in the combat tab, not too many crazy important settings. I want to say one of them is under combat advanced. This is where you go to do your tap to reload instead of like the prioritize interact if you're like a Warzone player or something like that. I also go over here to my overlay advanced settings and I turn my ping wheel delay off. What this means is that when I'm using my left paddle right here to ping either like a danger ping or try to ping an enemy or something like that, it makes it so that your scroll wheel doesn't come up. And that is it for the controller settings. Up next, we're going to go to audio. Here on the audio, I have the master game volume at 100. I'll go over how to open this tab if you don't have a keyboard and mouse. So what you want to do is press X on it and then lower the setting a little bit, then press square, and then it allows you to open up the menu. So the rest of my settings, I have dialogue and effects volume at 100, and I turn the gameplays down. Make sure that you choose your speaker or headphones device. I have the speaker output on stereo. I don't mess with the enhanced headphone mode or the configuration. I don't think it really makes that drastic of a difference. I actually did a video on that a couple months ago. For the audio mix, I have headphone bass boost. You want to have your asymmetrical hearing compensation on, and also go into your configure frequency intensity and try copying these settings here. Just be careful when you're wearing your headphones because these do get kind of loud as you're scrolling through them and they're really uncomfortable to hear. So I would take your headphones out, copy these both for the left channel frequency and the right channel frequency. They are the same on both. I've noticed that it helps me hear footsteps a lot better with those frequency intensities. I have the reduced tinnitus sound. I have that on, and then my hit marker preset is classic. This is what the voice chat tab looks like. I don't think that impacts any of the settings drastically at all. And before we get into the interface settings, I actually want to go into account and network. One of the settings that a lot of people forget is the dismemberment and gore effects. If you turn this off, it actually does improve your frames by a little bit, especially on console. There's a lot less craziness going on console, so make sure you have that off. And now let's go to the interface. So for telemetry, you can turn on your like FPS or whatever, but that's all personal preference. The important stuff is here in the readability. So you want to go to color customization, go to color filter, do filter 2, color filter target both, and then do the world to 80 and the interface to 100. This will make your game a lot more bright and vibrant, and is definitely a setting worth turning on. Also, I think one setting I forgot to go over is the safe area. I do make this all the way in towards the middle of my screen, and then just about halfway from the top in terms of the top and the bottom. I go to the multiplayer HUD presets. I put the magnified option on and makes it easier to see. Your eyes don't have to go as far. I go to visuals. I turn the minimap shape on square. The compass type as minimap. I mean, you can also do off. That doesn't really matter. The scale is 127, and then the rest of the settings are default. If you want to scroll down again to crosshair and turn this on to static, I do hit the show more. I turn crosshair dot on with a scale of default, sometimes larger if it's starting to feel too small. And then the crosshair color, the exact one that I use is this one right here, in case you want to copy it. It's just personal preference. I like the teal, and then the remainder of the settings are here in the gameplay HUD. And that's going to do it for all the PC settings for Black Ops 6 Ranked Play. Let's go over to console. And now for the PS5 console settings. First, you want to go into your system, and then under HDMI, you want to make sure that your enable HDCP is turned off. You see that bar is going to be off. This is a big one, something that you definitely need if you have like an Elgato or something like that, but even if you don't, it helps with input delay. You want to make sure that's off. Scrolling down to save data and game app settings, under the game presets, you want to make sure that under performance mode or resolution mode, you choose right here where it says performance mode. This is important for making sure that you get 120 FPS during the games that you're playing. You also want to scroll up, go to accessibility, and under controllers, make sure you have haptic feedback during console navigation turned on. This is kind of a weird setting, but supposedly it helps with controller input delay, so just turn that on. Under sound, there is the audio focus mode. I don't have my headphones plugged into my PS5 right now, but my settings are still showing up how I preferred them when I was plugged into the PS5. I do boost, high pitch, and then weak for the left and the right. This will be subjective and personal preference depending on what headsets you actually plug into your PS5, but as a starting point, try this out and then adjust it depending on how it sounds. Under accessories and then controller, you also want to make sure that your communication method, as we talked about earlier, is use USB cable. And then lastly, under screen and video, I'm a little bit weird and play at 4K on my PS5. If you have a good enough monitor that can do 120 frames at 4K, you should do it, because that does help with the input delay. The reason that happens is because even when the game is loading at 1080p, it actually first renders the game at 4K and then downscales it to 1080p. So simply playing at 4K skips that step and is the reasoning for the slight reduction in input delay with 4K. For the rest of the settings here, I have VRR on automatic. If you can use ALLM, you should, although my monitor for whatever reason doesn't support it. And then your 120 hertz output, want to make sure that's on automatic. The rest of my settings are here. I don't run HDR. You can if you want to. I think that actually does help with input delay too, but it makes my game look worse, especially when it goes through my Elgato, so that's why I have HDR off. The graphic settings are super simple. You want to make sure their 120 hertz refresh rate is on. The gamma and brightness, that's all personal preference and also depends on your monitor, so mine's at 60. This is what I was saying with my fidelity cast strength being on 30 instead of 100. That's because I play at 4K and the frames are a little bit worse when I play at 100 for the strength, so that's why I lower it all the way down to 30. The game still looks sharp enough for me, again, probably because I'm playing on 4K, but just know that this can be adjusted if you need to. And then the remainder of my view settings are here. These should be the exact same as earlier on in this video. Under the account and network, you should go into your settings, go to dismemberment and gore effects, and turn that off. All the weird blueprints that make the weird animations and stuff like that do impact your frames and the performance of your game on PS5. So if you turn that off, that helps just a little bit, making sure that your game stays smooth. And those are all my settings in Black Ops 6 Ranked Play for both PC and PS5. I hope this video helped you out. Like and subscribe if it did, and I will catch you next time at lunchtime.